Hi BookTube, I'm Scott, and welcome to my channel. Just a quick update as I sort of learned how to be regular on BookTube. I've looked at a lot of people and I've seen a lot of things that are being done out there, and often people will say, well, I'll do this video on Tuesday and I'll do this on every Saturday and everything like that. I find it really difficult to be regular in that way. To say, I'll do this every Tuesday night, or I'll do this every Saturday morning, or something like that, because things keep coming up, in my life that in real life, right? Life outside BookTube. But what I thought that I would do is, for me, I think the thing to do is let the books trigger when I want to do a video. In other words, I don't want to be pressured to finish a book, so I can't possibly say that I'll do this every week. But what I thought I would do is, when I have 3 things to talk about, then I'll do a video. So I read at a rate of 1 or 2 books a week. If I read 2 books in a week, I'm doing really, really well. So I thought that when I have 3 books, then I'll do a video. And I'll call these videos just a few books. So this is a few books, episode 1. And what I brought today was 3 books that I think represent some current interests in my fiction reading. And so we'll just start there. So the first book that I picked up, or the first book that I wanted to talk about, is a memory called Empire. And I just passed that book along to someone else this week, and but also this week this sequel came in, A Desolation Called Peace. So A Memory Called Empire is book 1, and I bought that last year. I bought it and read it last year. After the Worldcon, I saw Arkady Martine at Worldcon, and it won the Hugo Award that year. And I bought it and read it, and it was terrific. Really loved it. Now, during that 20 favorites video that I did, I was talking about Lord of the Rings, and I said something like that I don't read a lot of epic fantasy. And I want to make sure that, that's a true statement, but I want to make sure that people don't think that I dislike epic fantasy. It's just that it's not getting to the top of my piles, my to-be-read piles. I have limited reading time, and if you have an epic fantasy and something like A Memory Called Empire right next to it, I would choose A Memory Called Empire to read. But given that, Arkady Martine herself said that space opera, of which this book is a part of that genre, a space opera is often an epic fantasy set in the science fiction setting. So that's exactly what this book is. There's the added interest for this book, especially that Martine is she's a historian, and not unlike the tradition. We can go back to Foundation as a tradition, where Isaac Asimov was looking at the Roman Empire when he was doing his Foundation series. Arkady Martine says, and I'm reading here, it says, Martine said that the book was in many respects a fictional version of her postdoctoral research on the Byzantine imperialism on the frontier to Armenia in the 11th century, particularly the annexation of the Kingdom of Ari. So there you go. It's steeped in actual history, which gives it this added very interesting dimension. And language as well. Language is something that she plays with very well, harkening back a little bit to J.R. Tolkien, right? So she's doing a lot of things here that are just super interesting. And the story itself is interesting too. The story itself has to do with a person who is an ambassador to an empire that is getting ready to annex the space station that she lives on. So she's an ambassador from this space station to this empire, and the empire wants to basically annex their place, and they don't want that to happen. And so she's sent there to try to prevent it from happening, as an ambassador. Now, the interesting part of this is, not that that's not interesting, because it is, but an interesting piece of this is that she goes to this position after being given the memories of the person that she's replacing. So she's got almost a presence inside of her head of the person, as the person was the last time he was recorded or backed up, or however you want to say that, that person's in her head and she can converse with him. And but the problem is that the person that she's replacing has been murdered, and there is a gap between the version in her head and when he got murdered. So she does not have the full story in her head, and neither does the presence, the persona, as it were. But it's super fascinating. Again, space opera, just a very well written, engaging book that I thoroughly loved. And I'm definitely looking forward to this sequel, which showed up this week. It was just published this week. I pre-ordered it right after I read the first one, and really looking forward to it. So that's Arkady Martine, so space opera. The next thing I'll show you is also, well, I say also a fantasy. The other one is a space opera, but this one is a fantasy. And as I talk about, let's get this way up there because it's a very cool cover. This is Lord Dunsany, the King of Elfland's daughter. And something that I've been interested in lately are these almost source documents, I guess. The source documents for fantasies. I found this list called the Ballantine Adult Fantasy Series, and this is one of them. And I read this book, and I just thought it was terrific. It comes from, gosh, I'm trying to remember how old it is. But this was, well before Lord of the Rings and all that. Lord Dunsany. Yeah, this book is from 1977, but that's not when this thing was written. Let me see here. This was written the first edition was in 1924. And it's also in the Fantasy Masterworks series, says this page that I'm looking at here. But it's extremely good, and there's a lot of these fantasies that were written early on like that the Ballantine Adult Fantasy Series kind of collected and put together, and this is one of them. And I've been enjoying this. I think that the thing that got me on this was The Broken Sword by Poul Anderson. I read that and I just loved it, and I started to wonder, well, what else was being written, besides like Lord of the Rings and all the epic fantasies that it spawned? What spawned it? What spawned Lord of the Rings? And these are the kinds of things it did. So Lord Dunsany, the King of Elfland's daughter. And the next one that I want to read is called The Blue Star, I believe, by Fletcher Pratt. That was written well after this, but it's another one in this series that I'm looking forward to. So the King of Elfland's daughter, let's see if I could just read a little piece of this thing. It's just really good. It says here, we'll just read the opening. This is the very opening. In their ruddy jackets of leather that reached to their knees, the men of Earl appeared before their lord, the stately white-haired man in his long red room. He leaned in his carven chair and heard their spokesman. And thus their spokesman said, "For 700 years the chiefs of your race have ruled us well, and their deeds are remembered by the minor minstrels, living on yet in their little tinkling songs. Living on yet in their little tinkling songs. And yet the generations stream away, and there is no new thing." "What would you?" said the Lord. "We would be ruled by a magic lord," they said. "So be it," said the Lord. "It is 500 years since my people have spoken thus in Parliament, and it shall always be as your Parliament saith. You have spoken, so be it." And he raised his hand and blessed them, and they went. So they went back to their ancient crafts, to the fitting of iron, to the hooves of horses, to working upon leather, to tending flowers, to ministering to the rugged needs of the earth. They followed the ancient ways and looked for a new thing. But the old Lord sent word to his eldest son, bidding him to come before him. So then he basically tells his son, hey, I need you to go to Elfland and find a magic lord to come take his place over. So he does. He goes to Elfland, and in Elfland, time moves at a much different rate. and it's just the descriptions of everything. Lord Dunsany is really kind of an amazing writer. The magic that's involved is amazing. Just extremely well written, very classic stuff from, again, 1924. So, yeah. So I'm really getting into, or have gotten into over the last couple of years, some of these, source things. And I've got, like I said, Poul Anderson and then the Blue Star. And I've just slowly started collecting them as I come across them. But you can look up Ballantine Adult Fantasy, and then you'll get a huge list of the books that were in that series. And I think the series was curated by Lynn Carter. And anyway, it's incredible. Really something. And then the last one that I picked up this is a really nice edition of Last Call by Tim Powers. Tim Powers is a favorite. There we go. Last Call. This is a really nice edition from Subterranean Press. And this is a trilogy. This is the first one in a trilogy. I'll show you the back too. Okay, so what this is it's the Fisher King, but in Las Vegas, kind of. So there's cards in here. The magic in here is just fantastic. I can show you some more kind of in this book. Again, it's just a really nice edition. So there's the prologue. Okay, the prologue, there's quotes from T.S. Eliot, Alfred Lord Tennyson. Very, very good stuff. So in the very first chapter, there's this person who, his name is Georges Leon, and he is with his young son, and he's having thoughts like, well, I'm not really sure I should do this. I kind of love this kid, and it's unfortunate how much I love him. But what he's trying to do is become the Fisher King, which is, the Fisher King from mythology. And this would be like in the very beginnings of Las Vegas, kind of. And anyway, things happen. Tim Powers is sometimes difficult to talk about, but what this is it's a book about magic. It's a book about card playing, right? So there's things that happen in it. Okay, so let me back up. So the little kid that's in the prologue, that his dad is worried about how much he loves him. After the prologue, he ends up, that's the main character of the book, and this main character has been taken in by someone who is, I would say, like a Merlin kind of a character, but in this modern time. So you've got some real people in this novel that are gangsters in Las Vegas area back in, I'm not actually sure, the 60s or 50s. And then you have this main character who is like the son of a Fisher King, or has ability to do that, and it's his discovery of who he is himself. And there are things that the magic in it is just really, really amazing. So there are scenes like he's playing cards. They're playing poker on a boat, let's say, and you can tell by he's given advice like, if everybody's smoke from their cigars and cigarettes starts to pool in the middle of the table, then you need to get up and leave. Right? These are his signs, of things like that. If your drinks start to act differently, like you look at them and they're sloped or something like that, then it's time to go. Something sinister is happening. But it's just a really, really good book. Some people call it a horror novel, and I guess that it could be. There are some horrific things that occur in it. Like there's things that are after people, evil things. So it could definitely be called a horror novel, but it's just a really good one. And I fear that I haven't given it much justice here, but Tim Powers is a favorite. He wrote a book called Declare that I like very much. Declare is a Cold War novel that has like Lovecraftian elements in it. But again, Tim Powers likes to find little historical oddities, and then he'll write about them, but he'll give the oddity a magical explanation and then kind of run with that. So his books tend to have real life characters, people that really lived, mixed in with fictional characters. And the real life characters are not the main characters, they're peripheral characters. But whatever historical events they were involved with are twisted somehow by a magic, and things. He wrote also on Stranger Tides, which Disney had used even before they made their movie on Stranger Tides. I think if you like a pirate book, that's a good way to go. And in that pirate book, there's a scene where they're trying to talk to dead people, and the method that they use is straight out of the Odyssey. So it's just really cool. Tim Powers is great. Also an excellent short story writer. So, but there you go. There are a few books, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you for watching.